We are going to make a charm square quilt today, and you are just going to love how simple and easy this is going to go together. The key is a 4-patch, and so I have 4 piles of charm squares, and I'm just going through all my scrap stash pieces that I've set aside. These are from other projects left over or fat quarters that I've cut down, and I just keep them in piles. Right now they're in 3 baskets, as you can see, and I'm trying to get down to at least 2. So I'm doing lots of charm square projects. Now, what I need are 30 4-patch blocks. So I need 30 of each of these colors. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going through, and I've divided this into basically greens and blues. Then I have pinks and purples, red, orange, and yellow. And I'm just pulling one of each color as I go along. And I'm using some solids just because they're kind of, pretty colors. And I don't want to go super dark, so I'm being a little bit, selective in my choices, because I don't want to get so much in there that, those are the pinks. Let's get the blues and the blues, getting them in the right spot. Oh, here's a fun red one. Here's some more blues. And, we can kind of put that in the pink because it's got a little bit, actually it's more yellow, isn't it? Oh, here's a fun one. That'll go here. Oh, and there's a pretty yellow. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going through and I'm sorting them by color. Then, here's a pretty green one. I need both of these, this one and this one. They're just sitting on the top of the pile, and I couldn't not grab them. What else is in here? See, it's so hard just to choose a couple. There's so many pretty fabrics that we want to use all of them. What else? Okay, well, this is a good start, but see, I can't leave it alone. Oh, here's a purple one. I don't have one of these yet. And I am kind of going where I'm not duplicating a fabric, and that's not an issue. It's just that, I have a ton of odds and ends, lots of small quantities of a lot of different colors. So if I use 1 or 2 at a time, then I slowly get through the whole pile. Okay, here we are. We have 4 different piles. We're going to sew them together, and we are going to make a 4-patch. And the way we do that is we're going to chain stitch these 2, and then we're going to chain stitch these 2. And by having a 4-patch, number one, your quilt's going to go together quicker. It's going to be really easy to manage. And for me, doing the final assembly, this is a far more effective way than doing the web between each and every block. And I'll show you as we move along why I think that and why it works so well for me. The other thing we're doing is by grouping our colors, when we put our 4-patch together, we're not going to have a lot of the same colors next to each other. Now, when I get over to this block, I may decide to turn it, so these colors may fall in different places, and that's okay. But we're just working on keeping our colors balanced throughout the quilt, so I don't have a bunch of blues and then a bunch of greens over here. And that's not a problem if that's what you want, but that's not where I'm going here. This is going to be completely scrappy, and I want the colors spread out all over. So it's just a bright burst of colors, but there's some low colors too. What do I want to say? Light. That the saturation's not quite as much. It's a low saturated. But some of these are super bright. There's some white backgrounds. So mix it up. Don't have all the same thing. Get some really bright pinks in here. I need to get some more pinks. These are mostly purple. But and if you have some mixed ones, this is blue and yellow. Well, I'm going to call it a blue, but it's got some yellow and green, and this has lots of colors. So, just choose a general color block, a color placement, and then just fill up your piles so that you can make your 4 patches and go from there. There's also another way you can add some color and some interest to a simple quilt like this, and that's to add orphan blocks. And if you have half square triangles or 4 patches or anything like that equal the 5 inches that we need for these blocks, then add them in. Now, I'm going to show you a quick example of how to do this. These are from charm squares. So these are going to end up at 4.5 inches. I can't put them here unless I put a little trim on them. But I just want to show you the method. If you have some 6-inch squares, for example, and you want to create some 4 patches to add to your block, what you're going to do is put 2 together front to back, and you're going to sew down each side, and you can see better here where the lighter thread is, and then you cut it in half, and now you have 2 rectangles. And what you would do at this point is grab another one like this and put it in, let's say I want to put it this way, put it in the opposite direction. And I say opposite in that the seam allowance goes in the opposite direction. And you're going to sew here and here. And when you open this, you've got this 4 patch. Now, what I like to do is when I get to this point where I've cut them in half, I'll mix them together so not all the 4 patches are exactly the same. This way you get a variety of colors throughout your quilt. But this is a wonderful way to use up other blocks that you may have, to use up some scrap fabrics you don't have a use for. And then just incorporate these into your quilt, and it's going to add so much interest. You're really going to appreciate that. Now, here's one that's sewn together, and you can see how well that seam lines up. And I'm going to sew it, or excuse me, go ahead and just cut this and show you how that looks. But you can see how simple this is. It doesn't take a lot of time, but again, it's a perfect way to use up those fabrics. So we now have a 4 patch, and like I said, with the right size, you can put it right here. Then, if I didn't sew this other end, I now have 2 pieces, and I can, put them with different blocks. I can mix this with this one, and I can mix them up. So there's so much that you can do. So don't cut yourself short and just use the charm squares you have. Look in your scrap pile and see if you have other orphan blocks, half square triangles, anything, 4 patches that you may already have or that you can make easily from what's there. And you're going to make this quilt even more interesting. Varying the colors like we're doing and putting them in a particular placement is also going to, like I said, balance your quilt nicely. You want lights, you want darks, and you want some medium fabrics. Don't go all or the other, because this is going to give more balance to your quilt, but actually give it more depth and more visual interest. So go ahead and check out what you have on hand, get your charms together, and we are going to make a quilt today. This is that fast. We're going to get it finished very quickly. So let me put some of this together and show you how it works. The assembly of this quilt goes together very quickly, and it's super simple. Once you have your 4 patches lined out, you're going to take the top 2 from the top pile, your green and pinks, and then you're going to take top 2 from the second piles, which is your purple and blue. And you're just going to start chain piecing. You go through one and the next, and don't stop and cut it. Just keep going. So you'll notice I have my green and my pink, and then I have my purple and my blue. So I alternate, and I just go through and attach all my blocks together like this. Then, once I'm finished, I will come back and cut them apart in pairs. And I just do a quick check to make sure that, there's no 2 things side by side, or that I mess something up. Or with so many different colors, you're going to probably find no problems whatsoever. And so now I have some 4 patches that are partially put together. Let me show you what we do next. Actually, let me show you with this. It'll be easier first. I always start with my green in the upper corner. I fold it over on top. And when I sew it, I nest my seams with the seam towards the green block. The reason that becomes important is if every block is sewn the same way, then when I go to join my blocks, the seams are all going to nest. That's a huge time saver. So I don't press it at this point. I cut them apart. They're still attached, but I will come in and I'll finger press. So I want it to go towards the green, so I finger press right there, and that means the bottom side will go towards the blue. Now I'm using those colors simply because that's the way I laid it out. If you're using all one color, for example, what I would probably do is choose a light and a dark and two mediums. Do something like that, because then it sort of balances out your colors and the shades of the colors, and you don't get too many repeating close together. So once this is together like this, then all I'm going to do is sew down this seam. But again, make sure that seam allowance is going towards the green. And I have some here. Let me see. Is this it? Here it is. So here's my green and yellow, purple and blue. And you can see my seam allowance is going up towards the green. And I'm going to put these together, and I'm just going to go through and sew until I get them all together in a row. And I'm just going to come back now and cut these apart. Now at this point, the only pressing I want to do is to press this seam this way and this seam this way. Now I will set this seam, and that's what I do is I'll take my iron and I'll set this. I'll open this out, I'll press this, and then I'll press this. I don't want to press this one way or the other, because when I get around to putting my blocks together, I don't know, one's got to go up and one's going to go down. And I don't know which is going to be which until I'm actually sewing and determining which is going to be next to each other. So go ahead and press these. It's going to make it a lot easier to sew. And then just go ahead and put them in a pile. Now what I did to actually assemble my quilt is, if you recall, in my colors that I selected, let me just get this one here, those need to go together, is I had my greens, pinks, blues, and purple. Now the pink consisted of, actually, excuse me, pink and purple. That's sort of one that kind of snuck in under the wire, but that's okay, it still works. We sort of went with the red, orange, yellow, and a few pinks when it worked well for me. But again, there's no right or wrong. If there's a particular color you want more of or have more of, slip them in, that's okay. Even if these two go side by side, they're different prints. The colors are not exactly the same. Even if this is like that, it's going to work out okay. And that's the beauty of this quilt. Getting back on track, what I want to say is that, remember, in this corner, we had yellows, we had oranges, and we had reds. So what I did, and the red was sort of a peachy color red. So I figured there's 3 different colors in this group. I divided all my blocks into 3 piles. So let's say this one is the orange, this is peach, and this is yellow. And then this one is definitely orange. So I'll put that one here. And let's see, this is definitely the peach. And this is pink. So it's just going to go here because pink can fit anywhere. And this way I have 3 piles to draw from. So I'll take this one and I'll take this one, put them right sides together, sew them. And then I take this one and I add it. And then I just rotate through, and that way the colors get mixed up even more. And that's a really quick way to do it. Because I had a lot of very different colors in this particular block, I kind of wanted to space it out throughout the quilt and not have all the peaches or all the yellows be side by side. And that was my reasoning behind there. Again, you just can't go wrong with this quilt. But let me show you. I'm going to put that over there because those need to be finished. I started putting my quilt together, and what I did is I chain pieced all my blocks, and I just ran through and added the next row. You can see how I chain piece this, right? And the wonderful part of that is it just places everything where I need. This is where the 4-patch is important to me. If I did the regular web chain piecing, that means every piece is sewn individually. And that also means I have all these open spaces. And it gets caught on stuff, which makes me a little crazy. But more importantly is when I make my 4 patches, I can pre-press them. Whoop, that one got twisted. I can pre-press them so that when I go and sew this quilt or this seam, the quilt is already half pressed and I only have to worry about these large seams. That's one of my biggest pet peeves about the quilting, is that pressing when you've got all this web stuff going on and they're this and that, so you don't really get a chance to press it until the end, and it just is cumbersome to me because the quilt is hanging over, it's getting caught, it's this, it's that. I like to be able to create blocks ahead of time that I can sew, I can press, and then put my quilt together. Then the final pressing is going to be that much easier because everything's right where it needs to be. So once I get to this point, then I start coming across and sewing that seam. And look at how wonderful this is. Look at how all those colors are spread everywhere. And nothing stands out particularly more or less than the others, despite the fact that some are bright and light, some may be darker and more subdued, some have white, others have darks. But it all works wonderfully, and that's what we want in this kind of a scrappy quilt, is that everything works well together and looks terrific. So my next step is to take those blocks I showed you that are partially finished and complete this quilt. And it's going to be about 47 by 57 inches. But here's the best part. Oh my goodness, here's the part. It's kind of the secret to this quilt that I'm really excited about. This is easy, this is quick, and this is fast, and you're working with lots of pieces and lots of colors. But now, think about doing this with a layer cake. Oh my goodness, you're going to love this. Let me show you. And this is going to be the back of the layer cake that I'm going to show you next. Okay, let's go. I want to show you this part. I wanted a specific fabric to work for this particular quilt. I needed charm squares, but I also wanted to make alternating 4 patches with my charm squares, which means I'm going to use 4 charm packs to make a 4 patch, but then I want a square that I can use that's uncut. The sewn 4 patches measure 9.5. Yes, 9.5, but 9 inches when they're sewn together. So I knew if I got a layer cake, I could cut it into charm squares to do my 4 patches, and then I would just have to trim down the piece for the alternating block right out of my layer cake. So let me show you what we have here. Oh, this is going to be so exciting. And this is the Tulip Pink. Oh, this is Moon Garden by Tulip Pink. And it's such a pretty, pretty line of fabric. Now, it's the big pieces that I'm going to hold aside, try to decide which is up and down. So I have a total of 30 blocks. So I need basically 12 to 15 of the large ones, and then the rest will all be 4 squares, 4 patches. So I'm going to take my largest, oh my goodness, we got some optical pieces here. But what's fun with this is these will make some great 4 patches. So I'm just going to kind of put these together over here because these are the ones I'll cut up into my 4 patch. And then I will take these large ones. Ooh, I don't know. Those owls might be too much. I'm going to set those aside because I'm probably going to cut those down. I don't like kind of wild stuff staring at me in my quilt. It kind of is a little bizarre, I know. So I like these two. Bumblebees, well, I can get over it. We've got 3 of those. So what I'll do is once I determine what I have here, I'll go through and select which specifically I'm going to use. But look at all these wonderful colors. They're so pretty. Oh, this is great. I'm not always a huge fan of the black background, but I like this one. Look at that. So we've got Oh, the pinks. These colors are perfect for what I did on the back of the quilt. So we've got 2 of those. Oh, and this is the same print, just in a different colorway. That's pretty. I like that. And it looks like we have 3 of those. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't mind this because it just looks like a design, but the snake head's got to go. Okay, just like I said, these are just my little idiosyncrasies. And you won't see it in my quilt. But that's okay. That's okay. We all do our own thing. And here's some more owls. Like I said, okay, the owls are going to go in the chomp 'em up pile. Okay, I can do dragonflies. And I bought this for the colors. I really wasn't fully aware of what was in here, but that's okay. Make it work. You know, whatever you have, just work it together. So what I'll be doing is making my 4 patches, and I'm going to mix the colors. So maybe I'll take a chartreuse and a teal with a hot pink and some purple, and just kind of mix some of these up together. And then I will create my 4 patches, and I'm going to put those between these larger pieces. This is going to go so quickly, and this will make a beautiful quilt. All these colors are fabulous. And then I'm going to have the backing ready with all those other charm squares. This is a perfect match. Now, let me get started. I'm going to get ready, get my pieces together, and then I'll show you real quick how this is going to go together. This is even simpler than the one before because you only have to make half as many 4 patches. Oh my gosh, it doesn't get simpler. This layer cake is going to be finished before you can even lick the bowl. So let's go ahead and get started. I love it. So the first thing I did was take out the whole pieces that I want to keep. And I have 12 of those. And no snake eyes. So I worked around that. Then I divided everything up into piles of 4. So I had 5 piles of 4 different blocks. And I kind of mixed the colors and the prints up. And what I do when I set this up is I want to put the prints or the bigger prints opposite than just the sort of geometric, almost blender type fabrics. And this way my 4 patch will kind of have some balance going on and some prints, but it's not all in one spot. Because when I put these all together, I don't want everything jumbled in one corner. You know how I like it. I like it balanced. So what I'm going to do is I'll flip these over so they're right sides together, and I'm going to sew down each side of these. And then I'll use my iron to set the seam. And so then that puts me here. So I have my blocks, all 4 now. There's 4 different fabrics, and I have them sewn 1/4 inch down each side, and I have set the seams. With the side seams sewn down each side, I'm going to cut it at 5 inches. So I'm cutting it right down the middle. I want to line that up. That looks pretty good. We'll put it on the 5 and the 5. And just make sure I get a good straight line. And I'm going to cut it. Make sure you cut it in line with where you sewed, because you don't want to cut it in the opposite direction. Then, once this is done, oh, I didn't cut the other one. Well, I'll just show you with this example. We're going to put them together, seam to seam, and we want to have the opposite colors together. And when we do that, we're going to sew along this edge, nesting our seam allowances, and do the same on the other side. So when we get that finished, it'll look like this. So we have the seam along the middle of each, and then we sew these outer edges. And there we are. Now this is where the magic happens, and it just works really, really well. I'm going to line up my 5 inches right here and cut it down the center. And look at that. I've got my 4 patches good to go. I'm going to do this one. Now, because we use 4 different fabrics, and our 4 patch obviously will have those 4 fabrics, but they're going to be in different positions. They're going to be in different locations within the 4 patch block. So they're not all going to fall exactly the same, which I appreciate because I don't want it all to be, duplicated. So let's do these birds because they're easy. We can tell what's up and down. So we have a bird here and we have a bird here. Let's see, we have a bird up here and we have a bird down here. So things are going to be mix and match. And, in some places in the quilt, it might go this way, and it just depends on how we lay it out. But this is a great way to do 4 patches with a layer cake. And let me show you. Once that's done, and here's some more that I have all pieced together, and I have set the seams. And what I just need to do now is start putting my quilt together. But see how wonderful these look, and they can go this way and that. And so as I'm piecing my quilt, I'm going to alternate these, and I will put one of these blocks here, and we'll put one of these blocks here, and then we'll put one of these blocks like this. So see how great that's going to look? Those colors are fabulous. And obviously these won't be side by side, but it's just going to be a great color. What do I want to say? A great splash of color. It'll be just gorgeous. I'm so excited to get this finished. So that's what I'm going to do next now is start putting these together. And I think what I'm going to do, I could put this together in 4 patches and then put the big thing together, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sew them as they are and just run it through and see how it turns out. So here we go. I'm really excited. I can't wait to show you the next step. It's going to be finished. And here's the first quilt. You can see all the individual 4 patches and everything just lines up beautifully. There are 5 4 patches by 6 4 patches. So this is equal. You would need about 3 charm packs to create this quilt here. I think there's 120 charms. And I just love how it turned out. The colors are great. I like the way everything is just spread out, and there's so many different colors in there. It's just gorgeous. And here is a second quilt made from layer cakes, and it has the same 4 patch design with the larger 10-inch, actually 9.5-inch squares alternating. And it makes it quicker because you don't have to make that extra 4 patch, but look at these seams you don't have to match. And the easiest way to do this would be to have 15 of the 4 patches and 15 of the large blocks. I only had 12, so there's a couple places where I have 4 patches side by side. And that worked out fine, but I really love these colors. They are absolutely gorgeous. And here they are side by side. I really do like both of them. I'm just not sure how I feel about them being on the same quilt. So that's something to think about. Let me know what you think. If you have an opinion or any ideas, let me know. But, oh, they're so pretty and such a fun and easy quilt. I hope you get to give it a try. As always, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I really appreciate you following along. Have a fantastic rest of your day.